Do you want to lose weight effortlessly without drugs? In this episode, you will learn how not eating for 16 hours and using the next 8 hours to eat foods that heal helps you reach your goal of losing weight or reducing inflammation. The whole body benefits from fasting. Your body gets a cellular reset called autophagy. Your spirit gets quieter and your soul finally has room to ask what you're really hungry for. That's how we build one whole body happiness. If you've ever struggled with losing weight, intermittent fasting might be the tool you didn't know you were looking for.
Oh yeah, growing happiness with Dr. C. Alchemy for your soul. The Transformation Podcast. The Transformation Podcast.
This is the brief on the synergistic science of fasting and whole foods. You know, combining a 16-hour fast with whole foods isn't just some diet trend. It's a scientifically validated framework where fasting triggers deep cellular repair and eating provides the raw materials to rebuild. First, the cleanup. A 16-hour fast acts like a massive cellular sweep. It puts pro-inflammatory monocytes into sleep mode and raises arachidonic acid, which literally switches off your chronic inflammation alarms, the NLRP3 and inflammasome. At 16 hours, your cells start a self-cleaning process called autophagy. Imagine fasting as hiring a deep cleaning crew for your cells. But what happens if you track mud in immediately after the floors are washed? Second, the sabotage. Breaking your fast with ultra-processed junk absolutely ruins that cleanup. An NIH trial by Dr. Kevin Hall showed processed diets push people to eat 500 extra calories daily. Worse, junk food reactivates the exact inflammatory alarms you just silenced. Seriously, what's the point of fasting for 16 hours if your 8-hour eating window just floods your system with the inflammatory seed oils and oxidative stress you tried to eliminate? Finally, the rebuild. Whole foods provide one way to complete this protocol. Breaking a fast with fiber, quality protein, and polyphenol-rich berries provides vital materials for cellular rebuilding. Think of it like delivering high-quality lumber and bricks right after the demolition crew cleared out the waste. A quick heads up from Frontiers in Nutrition. If you see an inflammation spike when starting out, don't panic. It's a normal, temporary, biphasic immune response, not a failure. Ultimately, fasting creates the biological conditions for repair, but only whole foods can actually complete the process.
Welcome to the Two-Prong Health Reset. Today, we're building your internal literacy by exploring the exact cellular science of demolition and reconstruction.
Fasting and whole foods operate as a synergistic engine. Fasting creates the biological conditions for the cleanup phase, while whole foods provide the raw materials to result in an incomplete protocol. Where ultra-processed foods actively undo the fasting cascade. You can fast perfectly for 16 hours and easily erase those metabolic benefits during an 8-hour window of hyper-palatable processed food. Beware, the fasting window initiates metabolic demolition. At 16 hours, insulin plummets, signaling the body to shift from storing fuel to burning it. Fat oxidation begins. This triggers autophagy, the body's internal waste management system. It breaks down accumulating cellular effects against metabolic dysfunction and cellular aging. Striking the balance is key to the limits of cellular self-cleaning. A 16-hour window activates optimal cleanup without crossing the threshold into harmful autophagic cell death. The ultimate target of the fasting state is chronic inflammation. Fasting systematically shuts down the body's inflammatory alarm systems at a cellular level, creating a recalibrated immune state. Let's look at the inflammation control panel and disarming the alarms. Fasting directly inhibits the NLRP3 inflammasome, quieting chronic inflammatory cascades, and it puts pro-inflammatory monocytes into sleep mode. Let's look. Targeting immune and fat cells, fasting activates the FOXO4 protein. This suppresses inflammatory activity and addresses inflammation generated directly inside visceral fat by dropping pro-inflammatory cytokines. Now, the adaptation curve. Why inflammation spikes before it plunges. A temporary rise in markers is a normal adaptive immune response. Experience the most dramatic long-term relief. Now, the eating window is a rebuilding opportunity. The 8-hour feeding window provides the critical raw materials, cellulars, proteins, and polyphenols needed for reconstruction. Build your phytochemical arsenal by matching foods to cellular targets. Berries work to suppress the master inflammation switch. Leafy greens reduce cytokine circulation, and omega-3s lower CRP, a powerful defense system. In the synergy matrix, we see how the windows complete each other.
Autophagy activates and inflammation reduces during fasting, and whole foods follow up by extending anti-inflammatory effects. The fuel quality matrix, it's reconstruction versus sabotage. Whole foods deliver raw materials and restore anti-inflammatory hormones, while ultra-processed foods introduce oxidative stressors and chronically reactivate inflammation. Here is the complete protocol. 16 hours of cellular demolition plus 8 hours of whole food reconstruction equals the health reset. Embrace the synergy to permanently shift your metabolic baseline.
Millions of people are adopting intermittent fasting to try and fix chronic inflammation, hoping to heal a body that feels frayed and overheated. But according to a 2025 systematic review in Frontiers in Nutrition, many of these people hit an unexpected wall. When they start fasting, their inflammatory markers temporarily spike. They feel awful, assume the protocol is failing, and quit. This biological backfire usually comes down to a specific misunderstanding. Fasting gets treated as a vacuum, a magic switch that allows you to pack your 8-hour eating window with highly palatable processed foods. This chart shows how easily that approach erases the benefits of a fast. Based on clinical trials from the NIH, daily caloric intake surges by about 500 extra calories a day when people eat ultra-processed diets compared to whole food diets. You can endure a 16-hour fast and still eat right through your metabolic deficit by dinner. Fasting while ignoring food quality is a biological contradiction. To actually lower inflammation, you have to look at both sides of the equation in what researchers call the two-prong reset. Prong 1 is the teardown phase. During a 16-hour fasting window, your body initiates a systematic clearing of damaged inflammatory pathways. The mechanisms behind this teardown are highly specific. Researchers at Cambridge University discovered that fasting reliably raises blood levels of a molecule called arachidonic acid. That molecule acts as a direct inhibitor. It physically locks into and suppresses the NLRP3 inflammasome, shutting down the body's chronic inflammation alarm system at the source. At the same time, research out of Mount Sinai shows that fasting forces pro-inflammatory immune cells, known as monocytes, into a low-activity sleep mode. They stop damaging healthy tissue while still remaining fully capable of fighting off acute infections. By the 16-hour mark, findings from the Institut Pasteur show the body triggers autophagy. This is a cellular self-cleaning process that breaks down accumulated waste and damaged proteins. The body requires a specific duration of nutrient deprivation to initiate this cleaning, but pushing significantly deeper into extreme restriction can trigger cellular death. This makes the 16-hour mark a strategic boundary for activating repair without the risk of systemic breakdown. Fasting establishes the biological state where repair becomes possible. That brings us to prong 2, the rebuild phase. Your eating window is the decisive time frame where you either lock in those fasting benefits or negate them entirely. Specific whole foods provide the exact chemical reinforcements your freshly cleaned cells need. The polyphenols in dark berries suppress master inflammation switches, and the sulforaphane in leafy greens lowers inflammatory cytokines. Omega-3 fatty acids step in next. They provide the structural components required to rebuild the cell walls that were cleared out during autophagy, interlocking tightly to form a resilient barrier. Now consider breaking that same fast with a meal of ultra-processed foods. Processed food bombards the freshly cleaned system with advanced glycation end products and severe oxidative stressors. They start chipping away at your newly formed cellular structures. These dietary stressors directly reactivate the exact NLRP3 inflammasome alarm you just spent 16 hours working to shut down. Your eating window is a delivery mechanism. The raw materials you provide determine whether the cellular reset succeeds or fails. This explains the paradox we looked at earlier, why people with heavy inflammation feel worse when they first start fasting. This graph tracks the biphasic baseline effect. If your starting levels of inflammation are highly elevated, the immune system undergoes a temporary, necessary spike early in the program. You have to move through that brief peak to reach long-term systemic resolution on the other side. But look at how this trajectory splits. If you pair fasting with ultra-processed foods, your inflammation levels rebound straight into the red zone. If you pair it with whole foods, the line flattens out safely at the bottom. The 16 hours you spend fasting drive the degradation and removal of damaged cellular waste, and the 8 hours you spend eating must deliver the raw materials required to synthesize new functional tissue. Tackling chronic inflammation means treating fasting and whole food nutrition as a single, inseparable loop. Utilizing one without the other is actively counterproductive.
Now is the time we must learn about how we engage in or know what our purpose is. We also need to understand spiritual chemistry so that we have the tools we need to create the life we wish to create and live in. Lastly, we need to understand what is going on in our body beneath the skin. When you know the how and why of our working equation of soul plus spirit plus body equaling a whole body happiness plan. For this episode, we are focused on intermittent fasting. Mayo and Harvard both emphasize that intermittent fasting is one tool among many, and it must be matched to the person and their health context. Let's wrap it all up. Now,
I blew it again. I have no discipline. If you've ever tried intermittent fasting and hit a wall, those thoughts probably feel like an objective truth. You're staring at the clock, feeling weak because you couldn't make it to hour 16. It helps to view fasting as a specific tool in your kit, rather than a defining part of your personality. When your body fights back against a restricted eating window, it's sending a biological signal that the tool is being applied incorrectly for your current state. Shifting your perspective this way turns those perceived failures of willpower into solvable biological data points. This shift requires moving from guesswork to stewardship. Instead of judging your cravings, you begin a biological audit, a systematic check of how your internal systems are actually responding to the stress of fasting. You're taking on the role of the scientist overseeing a study, looking for evidence of what works and what doesn't. Every responsible study begins by defining the exclusion criteria. For certain people, the physiological stress of fasting carries risks that outweigh any potential rewards. First, we exclude those pregnant or breastfeeding, growing children, and frail seniors over 65. We also exclude anyone with heart, kidney, or liver disease, eating disorders, and diabetics on specific medications like insulin or sulfonylureas. For these groups, attempting a 16-8 fast without medical supervision creates a biological hazard. To understand why the body often rebels during a fast, we have to look at the friction occurring at a microscopic level. Inside your cells, the NLRP3 inflammasome acts like an alarm system. When constantly triggered, it causes chronic inflammation. White blood cells called monocytes get stuck in this overactive state. Fasting forces these cells into a dormant sleep mode, lowering the inflammatory signal. However, while your cells are repairing, your brain's reward centers and appetite hormones are hardwired by evolution to fight back, triggering intense cravings to ensure you survive the perceived famine. The fatigue and hunger you feel are the direct result of this conflict between cellular healing and your ancient survival wiring. Because this process is taxing, you must monitor a specific checklist of red flags that indicate the experiment is no longer serving you. Watch for signs of chronic depletion, persistent fatigue disrupting daily tasks, ongoing brain fog, or drops in mood while fasting. Look for signs of metabolic stress, such as losing control around food during your eating window or rapid weight loss accompanied by muscle weakness. Then there are the medical danger signs: dizziness, fainting, or heart palpitations. If these occur, you must stop the fast immediately. Pushing through these specific physical symptoms doesn't build discipline. It compromises your metabolic health. If the audit is going well and you're seeing results, the next question is how long to maintain the protocol. Most human trials for intermittent fasting only run for 8 to 12 weeks. Beyond that 3-month mark, the data lines essentially disappear. We lack strong evidence to show that a strict daily 16-hour fast is a sustainable lifestyle for years at a time. Treating a temporary reset tool as a permanent fixture risks diminishing returns, where the body pushes back against constant restriction. The final operational rule is to treat the 16-hour reset as a seasonal intervention. Give it 12 weeks to work, monitor your energy and strength, and then step back to reassess. You can move to a gentler 12 to 14-hour window or take periodic breaks while still retaining the metabolic benefits. Pairing these gentler periods with an anti-inflammatory diet can lower markers like CRP and IL-6,
providing cellular health benefits without the strain of extreme restriction. Resolving stewardship means recognizing that a successful experiment isn't about fasting indefinitely. It's about learning how to listen to and command your own biology.
I want to leave you with something today. This episode covered a lot, maybe more than you can hold on to from one listen. So I built you a free listener lab. It's not homework. It's a place to sit with what you just heard, test your understanding, and ask yourself what it means for your life. You'll find the link in the show notes. For those of you who want to go all the way in, there's also a full workbook available. Same science, much deeper, with writing space for the questions that really matter. Also in the show notes. Take care of your beautiful body this week. Feed it like it's worth it, because it is. This is Dr. C, and this is Growing Happiness with Dr. C. Peace and blessings.